Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Kauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Tarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We welcome you all for the Saturday morning class at ISKCON of Silicon Valley. Sorry, we are starting a little late, so we'll start with reading the translations of Brahma Samhita. Once we finish the translation, we'll go and recite the entire Brahma Samhita in front of their lordships, and then we'll start reading the Ramayana. Shri Brahma Samhita, text 1. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. The spiritual place of transcendental pastimes of Krishna is portrayed in the second verse. The super excellent station of Krishna, which is known as Gokula, has thousands of petals and a corolla like that of a lotus sprouted from a part of his infinitary aspect, the whirl of the leaves being the actual abode of Krishna. The whirl of that transcendental lotus is the realm wherein dwells Krishna. It is a hexagonal figure, the abode of the indwelling, predominated and predominating aspect of the Absolute. Like a diamond, the central supporting figure of self-luminous Krishna stands as the transcendental source of all potencies. The holy name, consisting of 18 transcendental letters, is manifested in a hexagonal figure with sixfold divisions. The whirl of that eternal realm Gokula is the hexagonal abode of Krishna. Its petals are the abodes of gopis, who are part and parcel of Krishna, to whom they are most lovingly devoted and are similar in essence. The petals shine beautifully like so many walls. The extended leaves of that lotus are the garden-like Dhamma, that is the spiritual abode of Sri Radhika, the most beloved of Krishna. The surrounding external plane of Gokula is described in this verse. There is a mysterious quadrangular place named Shvetwadvipa surrounding the outskirts of Gokula. Shvetwadvipa is divided into 4 parts on all sides. The abode of Vasudeva, Shankarshana, Pradyumna and Aniruddha are separately located in each of these 4 parts. These 4 divided abodes are enveloped by the 4-fold human requirements such as piety, wealth, passion and liberation, as also by the 4 Vedas, namely Rig, Sama, Yajur and Atharva, which deal with the mantra and which are the basis of achievements of the 4-fold mundane requirements. 10 tridents are fixed in the 10 directions, including the zenith and nadir. The 8 directions are decorated with the 8 jewels of Mahapadma, Padma, Shanka, Makara, Kachapa, Mukunda, Kunda and Nila. There are 10 protectors, Dikpalas, of the 10 directions in the form of mantra, the associates of the hues of blue, yellow, red and white, and the extraordinary potencies bearing the names of Vimala, etc. shine on all sides. The Lord of Gokula is the transcendental supreme Godhead, the own self of eternal ecstasies. He is the superior of all superiors and is busily engaged in the enjoyments of the transcendental realm and has no association with his mundane potency. Krishna never consorts with his illusory energy. Still, her connection is not entirely cut off from the absolute truth. When he intends to create the material world with the amorous pastime in which he engages by consorting with his own spiritual chit potency Rama, by casting his glance at the deluding energy in the shape of sending his time energy is an auxiliary activity. The secondary process of association with Maya is described. Rama Devi, the spiritual chit potency, beloved consort of the Supreme Lord, is the regulatrix of all entities. The divine plenary portion of Krishna creates the mundane world. At creation, there appears a divine halo of the nature of his own subjective portion, Swamsa. This halo is divine Shambhu. This halo is divine Shambhu, the masculine symbol or manifested emblem of the Supreme Lord. This halo is a dim twilight reflection of the supreme eternal effulgence. This masculine symbol is a subjective portion of divinity who functions as progenitors of the mundane world, subject to the supreme regulatrix Niyati. The conceiving potency in regard to mundane creation makes her appearance out of the supreme regulatrix. She is Maya, the unlimited, non-absolute apara potency, the symbol of mundane feminine productivity. The intercourse of these two brings forth the faculty of perverted cognition, the reflection of the seed of the procreative desire of the Supreme Lord. All offspring of the consort of the great Lord Maheshwara of this mundane world are of the nature of the embodiment of the mundane masculine and feminine generative organs. The person embodying the material causal principles, namely the great Lord of this mundane world Maheshwara Shambhu, in the form of male generating organ, is joined to his female consort, the limited energy Maya, as the efficient causal principle. The Lord of the world, Mahavishnu, is manifest in him by his subjective portion in the form of his glance. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, would you like to read the next 10 verses?
The Lord of the mundane world, Mahavishnu, possesses thousands and thousands of heads, eyes, hands. He is the source of thousands of avatars, in his thousands of subjective portions. He is the creator of thousands of individual souls. This same Mahavishnu is spoken of by the name of Narayana in this mundane world. From that eternal person has sprung the vast expanse of water of the spiritual causal ocean. The subjective portion of Sankarshana, who abides in Paravyoma, the above supreme Purusa, with thousands of subjective portions, reposes in the state of divine sleep, or yoga nidra, in the waters of the spiritual causal ocean. The spiritual seeds of Sankarshana existing in the pores of skin of Mahavishnu are born as so many golden sperms. These sperms are covered with 5 great elements. The same Mahavishnu entered into each universe as his own separate subjective portions. The divine portions that entered into each universe are possessed of his majestic extension, i.e., they are the external universal soul Mahavishnu, possessing thousands and thousands of heads. The same Mahavishnu created Vishnu from his left thumb. The same Mahavishnu created Vishnu from his left thumb, Brahma, the first progenitor of beings, from his right limb, and from the space between his 2 eyebrows, Sambhu, the divine masculine manifested halo. The function of Sambhu in relation to jivas is that this universe, enriching the mundane egotistic principles, has originated from Sambhu. Thereupon, the same great personal Godhead, assuring the threefold forms of Vishnu, Prajapati, and Sambhu, entering into the mundane universe, plays the pastimes of preservation, creation, and destruction of this world. This pastime is contained in the mundane world. Hence, it is being perverted. The Supreme Lord, identical with Mahavishnu, prefers to consort with the goddess Yoga Nidra, the constitute of his own spiritual energy. Chit, potentially full of ecstatic trance of eternal bliss appertaining to his own divine personality. When Vishnu, lying in the ocean of milk, wills to create this universe, a golden lotus springs from his navel pit. The golden lotus, with its stem, is the abode of Brahma, representing Brahmaloka or Satyaloka. Before their conglomeration, the primary elements in their nascent state remained originally separate entities. Non-application of the conglomerating process is the cause of their separate existence. Divine Mahavishnu, primal God, through association with his own spiritual chit potency, moved Maya, and by the application of the conglomerating principle, created those 5 different entities in their state of cooperation. And after that, he himself consorted with Yoga Nidra by way of his eternal dalliance with his spiritual chit potency. By conglomerating all those separate entities, he manifested the innumerable mundane universes, and himself entered into the inmost recess of every extended conglomerate. Virad Vigraha. At that time, those jivas had lain dormant during the cataclysm, were awakened. The same jiva is eternal and is for eternity and without beginning joined to the Supreme Lord by the tie of an eternal kinship. He is transcendental spiritual potency. The divine lotus which springs from the navel pit of Vishnu is in every way related to this spiritual tie with all souls and is the origin of 4-faced Brahma versed in the 4 Vedas. On coming out of the lotus, Brahma, being guided by the divine potency, turned his mind to the act of creation under the impulse of previous impressions. But he could not see he could see nothing but darkness in every direction. Then the goddess of learning, Saraswati, the divine consort of the Supreme Lord, said thus to Brahma, who saw nothing but gloom in all directions. O Brahma, this mantra, Klim Krishna Govinda Gopi Dhyana Vallabhaya Svaha, will assuredly fulfill your heart's desire. O Brahma, do thou practice spiritual association by means of this mantra, and all your desires will be fulfilled. Brahma, being desirous of satisfying Govinda, practiced the cultural acts for Krishna in Golaka, Lord of Sveta Dvipa, for a long time. His meditation ran thus: there exists a divine lotus of 1,000 petals, augmented by millions of filaments, in the transcendental land of Golaka. On its whirl there exists a great divine throne on which is seated Sri Krishna, the form of eternal effulgence, of transcendental bliss, playing on his divine flute, resonant with the divine sound, with his lotus mouth. He is worshipped by his amorous milkmaids with their respective subjective portions and extensions, and also by his external energy, who stays outside, embodying all mundane qualities. Then Gayatri, the mother of the Vedas, being made manifest, imparted by the divine sound of the flute of Sri Krishna, entered into the lotus mouth of Brahma. Born from himself through his 8 ear holes, the lotus-born Brahma, having received the Gayatri, sprung from the flute song of Sri Krishna, attained the status of the twice-born, having been initiated in the supreme primal preceptor, Godhead himself. Enlightened by the recollection of that Gayatri, embodying of the 3 Vedas, Brahma became acquainted with the expanse of the ocean of truth. Then he worshipped Sri Krishna, the essence of all the Vedas, with this hymn. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor who is tending the cows, yielding all desire, in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purposed trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept in playing his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock feather, with the figure of beauty tinged with the hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, round whose neck is swinging a garland of flowers, beautified with a moon locket, whose 2 hands are adorned with the flute and jeweled ornaments, who always revels in the pastime of love, whose graceful threefold bending form of Syamasundara is eternally manifest. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, substantiality, and is thus full of most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of that transcendental figure possesses in himself the full-fledged functions of all the organs, and eternally sees, maintains, and manifests the infinite universes, both spiritual and mundane. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas, but obtainable by pure unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, is without a beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning and the eternal Purusha. Yet he is a person possessing the beauty of blooming youth. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogis who aspire after the transcendental and betake themselves to pranayama by drilling the respiration, or by the jnanis who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane, extending over thousands of millions of years. He is an undifferentiated entity, as there is no distinction between potency and the possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him, and he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe at one and the same time. Such is the primeval Lord who I adore. I adore the same Govinda, this primeval Lord, in whose praise men who are imbued with devotion sing the mantra sutkas told by the Vedas, by gaining their appropriate beauty, greatness, thrones, conveyances, and ornaments. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, residing in his own realm, Golaka, with Radha, resembling his own spiritual figure, the embodiment of the ecstatic potency possessed of the 64 artistic activities, in the company of her confidants, Sakhis, embodiments of the extensions of her bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual rasa. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Syama Sundara, Krishna himself, with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts, with the eye of devotion tinged with the salve of love. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna, and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Rama, Narasimha, Vamana, etc., as his subjective portions. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose effulgence is the source of the non-differentiated Brahman mentioned in the Upanishads. Being differentiated from the infinity of glories of the mundane universe, appears as the indivisible, infinite, limitless truth. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is the absolute substantive principle, being the ultimate entity in the form of support of all existence, whose eternal potency embodies the threefold mundane qualities, sattva, rajas, and tamas, and diffuses the Vedic knowledge regarding the mundane world. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose glory ever triumphantly dominates the mundane world by the activity of his own pastimes, being reflected in the mind of recollecting souls as a transcendental entity of ever blissful cognitive rasa. Lowest of all is located the Devi Dhamma, or the mundane world. Next above is Mahesha Dhamma, abode of Mahesha. Above Mahesha Dhamma is placed Hari Dhamma, abode of Hari. And above them all is Krishna's own realm, named Golaka. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who has allotted their respective authorities to the rulers of those graded realms. The external potency of Maya, who is of the nature of the shadow of this Chit potency, is worshipped by all people as Durga, the creating, preserving, and destroying agency of this mundane world. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda in accordance with whose will Durga conducts herself. Just as milk is transferred into curd by the action of acids, but yet the effect of curd is neither same as nor different from its cause, milk, so I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, of whom the state of Sambhu is a transformation of the performance of work of destruction. The light of one candle being communicated to the other candles, although it burns separately in them, is the same in quality. I adore the primeval Lord, who exhibits himself equally in the same mobile manner as his various manifestations. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who, assuming his own great subjective form, who bears the name of Sesha, replete with all-accommodating potency, and reposing in the causal ocean with the affinity of the worlds, in the pores of his hair, enjoys creative sleep, yoga nidra. Brahma and the other lords in the mundane worlds, appearing from the pores of the hair of Mahavishnu, remain alive as long as the duration of one exhalation of the latter, Mahavishnu. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, of whose subjective personality Mahavishnu is the portion of portion. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, from whom the separated subjective portion Brahma receives his power for the regulation of the mundane world, just as the sun manifests some portion of his own light in all the effulgent gems that hear the names of Suryakanta. I adore the primeval Lord, whose lotus feet are always held by Ganesha upon the pair of tumuli protruding from his elephant head, in order to obtain power for his function of destroying all the obstacles on the path of progress of these three worlds. These three worlds are combined of 9 elements: fire, earth, ether, water, air, direction, time, soul, and mind. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, from whom they originate, in whom they exist, and into whom they enter at the time of universal cataclysm. The sun, who is king of all the planets, full of infinite effulgence, the image of the good soul, is as the eye of this world. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, in pursuance of whose order the sun performs his journey mounting the wheel of time. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, by whose conferred power are maintained and manifested potencies that are found to exist, of all virtues, all vices, the Vedas, the penances, and the jivas, from Brahma to the meanest insect. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who burns up to their roots all fruitive activities of those who are imbued with the devotion, and impartially ordains for each the due enjoyment of one's fruit of one's activities, of all those who walk in the path of work in accordance to the chain of their previously performed works, no less in the case of the tiny insect that bears the name of Indragopa than that of Indra, king of the Devatas. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, the meditators of whom, by meditating upon him, under the sway of wrath, amorous passion, natural friendly love, fear, parental affection, delusion, reverence, and willing service attain to bodily forms befitting the nature of their contemplation. I worship that transcendental seat known as Svetavipa, whereas loving consorts, the Lakshmis, in their unalloyed spiritual essence, practice the amorous service of the Supreme Lord Krishna as their only lover, where every tree is transcendental purpose tree, where the soil is the purpose gem, all water is nectar, every word is song, every gait is a dance, the flute is the favored attendant, effulgence is full of transcendental bliss, and the supreme spiritual entities are all enjoyable and tasty, where numberless milk cows always emit transcendental oceans of milk, where there's an eternal existence of transcendental time, who is ever present and without past or future, and hence not subject to the quality of passing away, even for the space of half a moment. That realm is known as Golaka only to a few very self-realized souls in this world. On hearing these hymns containing the essence of the truth, the Supreme Lord Krishna said to Brahma, Brahma, if you experience the inclination to create offspring by being endowed with the real knowledge of the glory of Godhead, listen. My beloved, from me to this science set forth in the following 5 slokas. When the pure spiritual existence is excited by means of cognition and service, bhakti, super excellent unalloyed devotion characterized by love of Godhead is awakened towards Krishna, the beloved of all souls. The highest devotion is attained by slow degrees by the method of constant endeavor for self-realization with the help of scriptural evidence, theistic conduct, and perseverance in practice. These preliminary practices of devotion, sadhana bhakti, are conducive to the realization of loving devotion. Loving devotion, than whom there is no superior well-being, who goes hand in hand in the attainment of exclusive state of supreme bliss, and who can lead to myself. Abandoning all meritorious performances, serve me with faith. The realization will correspond to the nature of one's faith. The people of this world act ceaselessly in pursuance of the same ideal. By meditating on me, by means of those deeds, one will obtain devotion characterized by love in the shape of the supreme service. Listen, O Vidhi, I am the seed, the fundamental principle of this world, of animate and inanimate objects. I am pradhana, the state of matter. I am praktri, material cause. I am purusha, efficient cause. The fiery energy that belongs specifically to the Brahman, that inheres in you, has also been conferred by me. It is by bearing this fiery energy that you regulate this phenomenal world of animate and inanimate objects.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. So, we are going to recite these verses in front of their lordships, because this is such a wonderful opportunity to offer our prayers to Lord Krishna. We might wonder how offering a prayer once can remove all the anarthas and sinful reactions from one's life. But it's very easy to understand that a thief or a person who commits a sinful activity commits it only once, but he has to be in the jail for like rest of his life or something like that. So one activity a person performs can change the course of his life. So same thing applies to our lives also. Like no matter where we are from, where our mind is, if we pull together everything and offer these prayers from our heart, they have the potency to change our lives for the rest of eternity. So with that attitude and love, let's try to offer these prayers to their lordships. So let's take this and go in front of Krishna. Ishvara Paramakrishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Sahasrapatra Kamalam Gokulakyam Mahatpadam Tatkarnikaram Tadhama Tad Anantam Shatambhavam Karnikaram Mahatyantram Shatkonam Vajrakilakam Sadanga Satpadistanam Prakritya Purushena Cha Premananda Mahananda Rasena Vastitam Hiyat Jyotirupena Manuna Kama Bijena Sangatam Tatkinjalkam tadam shanam tatpatrani shriyam api chaturasram tatparitaha shvetva adbhutam chaturasram chaturmurte chaturdama chatushkritam chaturbi purushartaischa chaturbir hetubir vritam shulair dashabiranat Urdvado Vidikshvapi Ashtabir Nidibir Jushtam Ashtabi Siddhibistata Manurupaischa Dashabhir Dikpalai Paritovritam Shamai Gauraischa Raktaischa Shuklaischa Parshadarshabhi Shobhitam Shakti Bistabir Adbhutabhi Samantataha Evam Jyotirmayo Deva Sadananda Paratparaha Atmaramasya Tasyasti Prakrityana Samagamaha Mayaya Ramamanasya Navigyostaya Saha Atmana Ramaya Reme Tyakta Kalam Tisrikshaya Niyati Sa Rama Devi Tatpriya Tadvasham Tada Tallingam Bhagavan Shambhur Jyoti Rupa Sanatanaha Ya Yoni Sa Parashakti Kamo Bhijam Mahadhare Linga Yoni Atmika Jata Ima Maheshwari Praja Shaktiman Purusha Soyam Linga Rupi Maheshwaraha Tasmin Avira Bhulunge Mahavishnur Jagatpati
Sahasrakshaha Sahasrapat Sahasra Bahur Visvatma Sahasram Sahasrashu Narayanaha Sa Bhagavan Apastasmat Sanatanat Aviras Karanano Nidhi Shankar Sanatmakaha Yoga Nidram Gatastasmin Sahasram Swayam Mahan Tadroma Bila Jalesu Bijam Sankar Sanasya Cha Haimani Andani Jatani Mahabhuta Vritani Tu Pratyandam Evamekam Sad Ekam Shad Vishati Swayam Sahasramurtha Visvatma Mahavishnu Sanatanaha Vamangarash Ashrijad Vishnum Dakshinangat Prajapatim Jyotirlingamayam Shambhum Kutrade Sharavasrijat Ahankaratmakam Vishvam Tasmare Tadvyajayata Atatai Vitar Viser Vilila Mudvahata Kila Yoga Nidra Bhagavati Tasya Shir Eva Sangata Shishrikasayam Tatu Nabhes Tasya Padmam Viniryayo Tannalam Hemanalinam Brahmanolokamadbhutam Tadvani Purva Rodhani Karanani Parasparam Samavaya Prayogakcha Vibhinani Pritak Pritak Chikchaktya Sajamanota Bhagavanadi Purusha Yojayanmaya Devo Yoga Nidramakalpayad Yojayitva Tutanyeva Pravivesha Swayam Guham Praviste Tasmimstu Jivatma Pratibhudyate Sanityo Nitya Sambandha Prakritischa Paraiva Sa Evam Sarvadma Sambandham Nabdyam Padmam Harerabhut Tatra Brahma Bhavad Bhuyas Chaturvedi Chaturmukha Sanjato Bhagavat Chatya Tatkalam Kila Choditaha Sisriksayam Matim Chakre Purvam Samskara Samskritaha Dadarsa Kavalam Nantam Nanya Kimapi Sarvataha Uvacha Paratas Tasmai Tasya Divya Saraswati Kama Krishnaya Govinda He Gopi Janaiti Api Valabhaya Priya Ranir Mantram Tedasyati Priyam Tapastvam Tapaetena Tavasidhir Bhavishyati Atate Pesa Suchiram Prinan Govindam Avayayam Svetadvipatim Krishnayam Golokasta Paradparam Prakritya Guna Rupinya Paryupasitam Sahasra Dala Sampane Koti Kinjal Kaprim Hite Bhumhis Chintamani Statra Karnikare Mahashane Sambasinam Chiranandam Jyotirupam Sanatanam Sabda Brahma Mayam Venum Vadayantam Mukham Bhuje Vilasini Kanarvitam Sveisver Amser Abhistutam Atavenu Ninadasya Trayi Murti Mayikatihi Spuranti Praviveshashu Mukhabhajani Swayambhuvaha Gayatrim Gayatas Tasmad Adhikatya Sarojajaha Samskritascha Digununa Dvijatamagamattataha Traya Prabhudota Vibhir Vignata Tadvasagaraha Tustava Vedasarena Stotrena Nena Keshavam Chintamani Prakaras
Chintamani Prakarasatma Sukalpa Vriksha Lakshavriteshu Surabhira Bipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Shata Sambrama Sevyamanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kwanantam Aravinda Dalaya Daksham Barhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasatvanamalya Vamshi Ratnangadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam Shyamam Tribangalalitam Niyata Prakasham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami अंगानि यस्य सकलेन्द्रियवृत्तिमन्ति पश्यन्ति पान्ति कलयन्ति चिरं जगन्ति आनन्दचिन्मय सदुज्ज्वलविग्रहस्य गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि अद्वैतमच्युतमनादिमनन्तरूपम् आद्यं पुराणपुरुषं नवयौवनं च वेदेषु दुर्लभमदुर्लभमात्मभक्तौ गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि पन्तास्तु कोटिशतवत्सरसम्प्रगम्यो वायोरतापि मनसो मुनिपुङ्गवानां सोऽप्यस्ति यत्प्रपदसीं निवचिन्त्य तत्त्वे गोविन्दमादिपुरुषम् अहं भजामि एकोऽप्यसौ रचयितुं जगदण्डकोटिं यच्चक्तिरस्ति जगदण्डचयाय दन्तः अण्डान्तरस्थपरमाणुचयान्तरस्थं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि यद्भावभावतदियो मनुजास्तथैव सम्प्राप्य रूपमहिमासनयानभूषा शुक्तैर्यमेव निगमप्रथितैस्तुवन्ति गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि आनन्दचिन्मयरसा प्रतिभाविताभिस्ताभिर्य एव निजरूपतया कलाभिः गोलोक एव निवसत्यखिलात्मभूतो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि प्रेमाञ्जनचुरितभक्तिविलोचनेन सन्तः सदैव हृदयेषु विलोकयन्ति श्यामसुन्दरमचिन्त्य गुणस्वरूपं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि रामादिमूर्तिषु कलानियमेन तिष्ठन् नानावतारमकरोद्भुवनेषु किन्तु कृष्ण स्वयं समभवत् परमपुमान्यो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि यस्य प्रभा प्रभवतो जगदण्डकोटि कोटिष्वशेषवसुधादिविभूतिभिन्नं तद्ब्रह्मनिष्कलमनन्तमशेषभूतं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि माया हि यस्य जगदण्डशतानि सूते त्रैगुण्यतद्विषयवेदवितायमाना सत्त्वावलम्बि परसत्त्वं विशुद्धसत्त्वं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि आनन्दचिन्मयरसात्मतया मनस्सु यः प्राणिनां प्रतिफलं स्मरतामुपेत्य लीलायितेन भुवनानि जयत्यजस्रं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि गोलोकनाम्नि निजधाम्नि तले च तस्य देवी महेश हरिधाम शुतेषु तेषु ते ते प्रभावनिचया विहिताश्च येन गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। सृष्टिस्थितिप्रलयसाधनशक्तिरेका चायेव यस्य भुवनानि बिभर्ति दुर्गा इच्छानुरूपमपि यस्य च तिष्ठते सा गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। क्षीरं यथा दधिविकारविशेषयोगात् सञ्जायते न हि ततः पृथगस्ति हेतो यशम्भुतामपि तथा समुपैति कार्यात् गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। दीपाच्चिरेव हि दशान्तरमभ्युपेत्य दीपायते विवृतहेतु समानधर्मा यस्तादृगेव हि च विष्णुतया विभाति गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। कारणार्वजले भजति स्म योग निद्रामनन्तजगदण्डशरोमकूपः आधारशक्तिमवलम्ब्य परां स्वमूर्तिं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। यस्यैकनिश्वसितकालमतावलम्ब्य जीवन्ति लोमविलजा जगदण्डनाथा विष्णोर्महान् सह्ययस्य कलाविशेषो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। भास्वान् यथाश्मशकलेषु निचेषु तेजः स्वीयं कियत् प्रकटयत्यपि तद्वदत्र ब्रह्मा ययेष जगदण्डविधानकर्ता गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। यत्पादपल्लवयुगं विनिधाय कुम्भ द्वन्द्वे प्रणामसमये स गणाधिराजः विघ्नान् विहन्तुमलमस्य जगत्त्रयस्य गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। अग्निर्मही गगनमम्बुमरुदिशश्च कालस्ततात्ममनसीति जगत्त्रयानि यस्माद् विभवन्ति विशन्ति यं च गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। यच्चक्षुरे सविता सकलग्रहाणां राजा समस्तसुरमूर्तिरशेषतेजः यस्य ज्ञया भ्रमति संवृतकालचक्रो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। धर्मोतपापनिचया श्रुतयस्तपांसि ब्रह्मादिकीटपतगावदयश्च जीवा यद्दत्तमात्रविभव प्रकटप्रभावा गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। यस्त्विन्द्रगोपमतवेन्द्रमहोस्वकर्म बन्धानुरूपफलभाजनमातनोति कर्माणि निर्दहति किन्तु च भक्तिभाजं Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami. Yam krodha kama sahaja pranayadi bhiti. Vatsalya moha guru gaurava sevya bhavai. Sanchintya tasya sadrishim tanuma purete. Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo Druma Bhumischintamani Ganamayi Toyamamritam Taganam Natyam Gamanam Api Vamsi Priyasaki Chidanandam Jyotihi Paramapi Tadaswadyamapi Cha Sayatra Kshiradbhi Sravati Surabhibhyascha Sumahan Nimeshardakyo va vrajati nahi yatrapi samayaha Bhaje Shvetva Dvipam tamaham iha golokamitiyam Vidantaste shantaha kshiti viralachara katipaye Ato vacha mahavishnur bhagavantam prajapatim Brahman mahatva vijnane praja sarge chachenmatihi Pancha shlokim imam vidyam vatsadattam nibodame Prabuddhe jnana bhaktibhyam atmani ananda chinmayi Udeti anuttama bhaktir bhagavat prena lakshana Pramanaistat sadacharaistadabhyasair nirantaram Bodhayanatmanatmanam bhaktim api uttamam labhet Yasya shreyaskaram nasti yaya nirvrittim apnuyat Ya sadayati mameva bhaktim tvaeva sadayait Dharma manyan parityajya mamekam bhaja vishwasan Yadrishi yadrishi shraddha siddhir bhavati tadrishi Kurvan nirantaram karma lokoyam anuvartate Tenaiva karmana dhyayan mam param bhaktimicchati Aham hi vishwasya characharasya bijam pradhanam prakriti pumamscha Maya hitam tejaitam bibarshi vide videhi tvam mato jaganti Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Iti Brahma Samhita Sampurnam Matsamo Nasti Papatma Naparadi Chakashana Parihare api lajjami kim pruve purushottama yuvatinam yata yoni yunam cha yuvatau yata mano abhiramate tadvan mano me ramatam tvayi bhuma uskalita padanam bhumireva avalammanam tvayi jata paradanam tvameva sharanam prabhu Govinda Vallabhe Radhe Prarthaye Tvamaham Sada Tvadiyam iti janatau Govindo Mam Tvaya Saha Radhe Vrindavanadishe Karunamrita Vahini Kripaya Nija Padabja Dasyam Mayam Pradiyatam Agninaya Suptaraya Yasman Vishwani Deva Vayunani Vidwan Yuyodi Yasmat Juhuranameno Bhuishtam Tena Mayuktam Videma For the upcoming MSF, Monthly Sankirtan Festival, we have the goal of reading the pastimes of Lord Ram, and Ramanavami is also coming very soon. So let's read from this book Ramayana, the story of Lord Rama, written by Bhakti Vikas Swami, and it's full of nectarian pastimes of Lord Ram. So today we are going to start with the first chapter. I'm not sure if you have the book or we have more copies. We can see if it's there. Otherwise, please listen to me. So I'll start from the introduction written by Bhakti Vikas Swami. So if you, we can read the chapters, and if you want to share any points, you can just share in the middle, raise your hands. Otherwise, at the end of the reading, we will share our realizations. Because the only goal of reading Lord Ram's pastimes is to increase our unalloyed devotion to him, so that we can engage more and more in his service. So with that intention and attitude, let's start with the introduction. Lord Ramachandra is not a mythical figure, an ordinary person, or even a great human being. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the source, maintainer, and controller of uncountable universes, both spiritual and mundane. As the Super Soul, he is present in every atom and in the heart of every living being. He knows everything, present, past, and future. Lord Rama is fully replete with 6 opulences, namely strength, fame, wealth, knowledge, beauty, and renunciation. He is the reservoir of all auspicious qualities and is the ultimate goal of life for the yogis, renunciates, and especially the devotees, whoever delight in glorifying his inconceivable pastimes. Being an expansion of Krishna, the original form of the personality of Godhead, Lord Ramachandra eternally resides in his own planet in the spiritual world. He is accompanied there by his expansions and associates, headed by his consort Sita, his brothers Lakshmana, Bharata, Shatrugna, and his celebrated servant Hanuman. Out of extraordinary compassion for the suffering conditioned souls, the Lord occasionally descends into this material world and is thus known as Avatara, literally one who descends. The Lord explains this in Bhagavad Gita. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirbhavati bharata abhyuttanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I discern myself to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion. I myself appear millennium after millennium. So let's stop here. So far, what did we learn? Like in any book, if you want to talk about a person, we tell like who is he, where is he from. Same thing, right? Maharaj is saying that first he's establishing that Lord Ramachandra is not a human being. He's not a mythical figure like other people say. That he's like a hero who lived long time back and he performed some pastimes. He is saying here that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is living as Paramatma within our heart. He is an expansion of Krishna, and he is full in all opulences of strength, fame, wealth, knowledge, beauty, and renunciation. And he is eternally existing in the spiritual world with all his associates. Okay, then if he is there eternally in the spiritual world and he is Supreme God, why does he come here? That's the reason. There are two reasons. What are that are mentioned here? You remember? First is? Yes, to annihilate the miscreants and to protect the devotees and to establish dharma. Three reasons. Okay, let's move forward. So there will be a quiz at the end of this reading. When the Supreme Lord comes to this world, he does so out of his own sweet will. Unlike the conditioned souls, he is not forced to take a body according to previous karma. Being far above the laws of karma and never even slightly under their jurisdiction, the Supreme Lord descends in his eternal Satchidananda form. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. When the Supreme Lord descends, he shows his sublime nature by performing incomparable activities. When he came in his original form as Krishna, he killed many apparently unconquerable demons, held the Govardhana hill on the tip of his little finger for 7 days when he was apparently only a small child, made the sun rise again after it had set, and took his friend Arjuna on a journey beyond the edge of the universe. When he came as Vamanadeva, he assumed the form of a dwarf, yet with 2 footsteps crossed over the whole creation. Assuming a gigantic form as the transcendental boar Varaha, he picked up the earth planet, which had fallen out of its orbit. As half man and half lion, Nrisimha, he stopped the atrocities of the demon king Hiranyakashipu by killing him. Although such extraordinary feats are doubted by men of puny intelligence, they are simply play for the Supreme Lord, who effortlessly creates, maintains, and destroys millions of universes. Similarly, when the Lord appeared as Lord Ramachandra, he performed the wonderful activity of slaying the tyrant Ravana, who was not to be killed by any other person. Ostensibly assuming the form and personality of human being, Lord Rama enjoyed many sweet pastimes with his dear devotees. The pastimes are inconceivable to the faithless, but are a source of transcendental joy for the theists. The pastimes are inconceivable to the faithless, but are a source of transcendental joy for the theists. The story of Rama has given pleasure and solace to theists for many thousands of years, and continues to do so. Not so long ago, when the people of India were accustomed to discuss the transcendental activities of the Lord, every Hindu knew the pastimes of Lord Rama as well as the back of his hand. Among the 3 great epics famous in India, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Srimad Bhagavatam, the Ramayana was traditionally most popular due to its relative simplicity and cohesiveness of plot. The action, drama, and pathos of Ramayana still place it among the world's most popular stories. Recently, with the spread of Bhakti movement throughout the world, there has been a revival of interest within India also about the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. This Bhakti revival has been brought about largely due to the efforts of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness and the prime exponent of Bhakti in the modern age. Srila Prabhupada elaborately describes the pastimes of Krishna in his writings and also wished that these pastimes of Lord Rama be widely distributed. This is an excerpt from letter from Prabhupada to Dinanath Mishra on 26 July 1975. This is a snippet I'm going to read. Regarding seeing your book on Lord Ramachandra partly translated into English, I am very much eager to see it. I have to translate all the Puranas, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and many other theistic literatures left by the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. I have a desire to translate the Valmiki Ramayana because that is authorized. It appears that in the Western countries there is a great demand for real knowledge of Vedic literature. So, you are a learned scholar both in English and Hindi, and you can do this completely devoted to the service of Lord Ramachandra. End of the letter. Ramayana was originally composed in Sanskrit by the great sage Valmiki, and later many versions were composed in the vernacular languages of India. Unfortunately, many of the translators and commentators did not come in pure devotional lineage of Valmiki and introduced many misconceptions and speculations about Lord Ram in their works. As a result, the pristine position of Lord Rama as a supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead remains hidden of the readers of such texts. This present edition attempts to present the pastimes of Lord Rama in their true glory. Although it is a summary study, nothing of the main body of the story has been left out. It is hoped that in the not too distant future, a devotional scholar will present a verse-by-verse translation of Valmiki Ramayana for the ever-increasing number of devotees throughout the world. We pray that by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, this edition of Ramayana will shower the highest fortune on its readers by awakening in their hearts loving feelings for the lotus feet of Lord Rama. We beg the devotees to bless us with their mercy so that we may also attain such a benediction. Again, it must be emphasized that the reading of the Ramayana will give greatest benefit if taken not simply as an exciting story, but with the understanding of the supramundane and eternally supreme position of Lord Rama. Those who read with this awareness will ultimately attain the greatest benediction of life, that of going back to Godhead. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvatah tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not upon leaving the body take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode. Bhagavad Gita 4.9. Lord Sri Rama, the absolute personality of Godhead, is attractive not only in his personal features but also in his transcendental activities. It is so because the Absolute is absolute by his name, fame, form, pastimes, entourage, paraphernalia, etc. The Lord descends on this material world out of his causeless mercy and displays his various transcendental pastimes as a human being so that human beings attracted towards him become able to go back to Godhead. Men are naturally apt to hear histories and narrations of various personalities performing mundane activities without knowing that by such association one simply wastes valuable time and also becomes addicted to the three qualities of mundane nature. Instead of wasting time, one can get spiritual success by turning his attention to the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. By hearing the narration of the pastimes of the Lord, one contacts directly the personality of Godhead, and by hearing about the personality of Godhead from within, all accumulated sins of the mundane creature are cleared. Once again, by hearing the narration of the pastimes of the Lord, one contacts directly the personality of Godhead, and by hearing about the personality of Godhead from within, all accumulated sins of the mundane creature are cleared. Thus, being cleared of all sins, the hearer gradually becomes liberated from mundane association and becomes attracted to the features of the Lord. The whole idea is that simply by hearing about the Lord's pastimes, one can become one of the associates of the Lord. That sentence again. The whole idea is that simply by hearing about the Lord's pastimes, one can become one of the associates of the Lord. One can attain to the highest perfection of life simply by attentive hearing of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord from the right sources. This process of hearing and the association of the devotees is especially recommended in this age of Kali. Quarrel. Adapted from Srimad Bhagavatam 15.26, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So whatever I just read about hearing is actually Prabhupada writing in Srimad Bhagavatam. So now quiz time. It's okay. In what mood should we read Ramayana? What's your understanding? Maybe you can take the mic. You have the mic? It's just, it could even be your understanding. It's okay. Like, because I'm not, like you had to give the specific word or something. It's just about like what you read. In what mood should we read Ramayana?
Yeah, we should read in such a mood that we're remembering the Lord and trying to get an association with Him.
Yeah.
As opposed to trying to get something out of it.
Yeah. Consider Him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the main thing. One should not think that He is an ordinary person. If we think that He is Supreme God, then there will be a purification. Isn't it? That's what Srila Prabhupada says. Okay? Yes, Prabhuji?
Just by hearing attentively, can become
Yeah, please give to him. That's the main point. Yes.
Thank you. So
Just, yeah, go ahead.
very
Repeat that.
encouraging. Like just by hearing, you can become like you can be one of the associates of the Lord,
It's
and
a-
all your sins could be cleared.
Yes, exactly. Why the sins should be cleared? Is there any reason why all the sins should go away? Why are we so worried about the sins? Because the sins are the ones that are stopping us from going back to Krishna. So if somebody says that just by hearing about Obama, can I become Obama's associates in the Senate? It's not possible, right? But see how Lord Ram is so exalted, and he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the reason why. Because if I talk about Obama, will he know whether I'm talking about him or about his glories? He doesn't know, because he is existing in one place at one time. But Lord Ram, if I sit here and talk about Lord Ram knows about it. How does he know? And he gives the purification to me, and he reciprocates with me. How is it possible? Is because in the beginning of this we read that he is within me as Paramatma. So he does the purification and cleansing of the material desires and all the sinful reactions, everything. So with this understanding that he is the Paramatma, if we do this, then what Prabhuji was saying, he can make us his associates and engage us in his service. So that's a very nice point, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. And that's what Maharaj also established as a fact by quoting Bhagavad Gita 4.9, where Krishna says that by hearing about my pastimes, one does not take birth again. Okay? And I also noticed how Prabhupada had a desire to write and translate verse by verse Bhagavatam. Ramayana and Mahabharata he wanted to write, but he didn't have enough time. Okay? Are there only one versions of Ramayana, or are there many versions of Ramayana? If there are many versions of Ramayana, which Ramayana is the authentic Ramayana? Can you tell?
The Valmiki Ramayana is mentioned here.
Yes. Valmiki Ramayana is authentic, and that's what Prabhupada recommends, because in other Ramayans, why is it not recommended?
It's not following the chain of succession.
The chain of succession, and the people who wrote the texts and the purports, they simply express their own desire. That's the reason. So, with this understanding, let's go into Ramayana. The first thing is Lord Ram is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the expansion of Krishna. He is within my heart as Paramatma. And if I hear about him, he will remove all the anarthas from my heart, and he could even make us associates in his spiritual abode and engage us in his service. So with this understanding, let's start with Balakanda. Once in a time, long ago, there lived a great sage named Valmiki, who was never so happy as when he was discussing the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One day, while Valmiki was explaining the nectar of Krishna consciousness to a group of disciples, the great sage Sri Narada Muni, who travels continuously throughout the spiritual and material worlds, glorifying the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appeared at Valmiki's hermitage. Upon seeing Sri Narada, Valmiki and his disciples immediately offered their respectful obeisances. Then, according to custom, they offered Sri Narada an elevated sitting place and washed his feet while sweetly inquiring about his welfare. Considering hearing this, thought just came to my mind that it's so, suppose if we are trapped somewhere and we want to escape, or we are in a prison house, or somebody is giving us trouble, or we are trapped, and somebody gives us some secrets of how to get out of that place. You know, how we put all our attention and put our ears, and if they are giving us some secret, we hear it with so much attention, because every word of it is so much relevant to us, because it's going to help us to get out of the prison house or the trap that we are in. With that much attention, if we try to hear like each and every word of the pastimes when we try to hear, because especially there are so many other things that we could be doing if we are not here. So, but if Krishna has given us this opportunity to sit in the temple and hear about him, so if we take this opportunity and like with so much effort, with monomaniacal focus, if we try to hear each and every word of is that, and because considering that this is the medicine that's trying to help me out of, get out of the trap, even it is for a few minutes, it's really worth, because it increases our attachment to more hearing. Okay, so I just wanted to share that. After this, Valmiki inquired from Sri Narada, "O best of all knowers of truth, please tell me who present now on earth is a reservoir of all opulences in full. Who is the most accomplished, learned, powerful, noble-minded, truthful, and grateful? Who possesses flawless character and remains engaged, looking after the genuine welfare of all living entities? Who is there present that is without an equal, clever, the most beautiful, and is never subject to the influence of anger or malice, yet instills fear within the hearts of even the great demigods when enraged? Who has the prowess to give protection to everyone within the three worlds? To whom has God, the goddess of fortune, bestowed all blessings? O great sage, please answer my inquiries fully." The great sage Narada, who is able to know everything that happens within the three worlds, replied, "O Rishi, there is an illustrious king by the name of Rama, who has appeared in the royal dynasty of Ikshvaku as the son of Maharaj Dasaratha. He is the embodiment of all transcendental qualities and the possessor of all opulences. Rama perfectly controls his senses and is the master of unlimited potencies. Rama has mighty arms that extend downwards to his knees, and his throat marked with 3 auspicious lines like those of canticle. He has high and broad shoulders, a wide chest, a beautifully formed head, a graceful forehead, powerful jaws, and deeply embedded collarbones. His eyes are large, he is majestically medium tall in stature, and all his limbs are well formed and symmetrical. His bodily complexion is dark greenish blue and has a great lustre. His intelligence is unfathomable, his manner is grave, and his speech is superb in tone and eloquence. So, when we imagine about so many things in our lives, right? Like always, so half of the time goes in imagination, either about the past, thinking about what happened, or about the future. But these impressions do not create any tangible things in our life. But it is said that the more one hears about the Lord, so when we say his arms extend down towards the knees, we can think in our mind like his arms extending towards the knees. Like that, if we think, the brain, the samskaras that we have in our life means, samskaras means the deep impressions that that is created within our mind is what is forcing us to behave in such in one manner in other. So if we hear more and more pastimes, those samskaras, the bad impressions are cleared off from our brain passages, and it leads us to the way of getting more attraction towards Krishna and unalloyed devotional service. So one can sit and imagine about Krishna, and when we hear about it, okay, how is he, then he walks like this, and little go more deeper, and if we go more focused, we can form and think this image within our hearts, and that will help us to develop more attachment. Lord Rama has a supremely pure character and is a follower of true religious principles. He is full in self-realization and is the upholder of Varnashrama Dharma. Truly, he is the support of the entire universe. He is simultaneously the destroyer of all foes and the only shelter for those who are fully surrendered. Lord Rama is the absolute knower of the Vedas. Furthermore, he is fully conversant with the use of all weapons. He possesses unflinching determination and is a genius with unfailing memory. Indeed, his learning is without bounds. He is wise, compassionate, and heroic in battle. He is loved by all creatures and is impartial toward friends and foes alike. He is grave like an ocean. In fortitude, he is like the Himalaya mountains. In strength, he is like Lord Vishnu. In beauty, he is like the moon. In forbearance, he is like the earth. And in anger, he is like the fire that blazes forth at the time of universal devastation. In wealth, he is like Kubera. And in devotion, he is like Dharma, the Lord of righteousness. Narada then briefly described to Valmiki the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra. He concluded by telling him that this same Lord Rama now rules over his subjects in a most righteous and exemplary manner. He explained that during the reign of Lord Rama, no one would suffer from any disease or mental disturbance. Everyone within Lord Rama's kingdom would be happy and prosperous, never fearing thieves, scarcity, or hunger. All the cities and villages would be filled with abundant grains, fruits, vegetables, and milk products. Indeed, the people would experience the same degree of piety and happiness that was exhibited during the Satya Yuga. There would be no natural disturbances like floods, earthquakes, or famine, and all the women would be chaste and never suffer widowhood. Lord Ramachandra will rule over the earth in this way for 11,000 years before returning to his supreme abode in the spiritual sky, Vaikuntha. This is very important about the rulers and their qualifications, because it is said that in the previous ages, even if the rain comes in the night, so that it doesn't want to disturb people during the daytime. But we can see here the rain hardly comes, and even if it comes during the commute time, isn't it? So these are all symptoms of how nature also reacts to our activities. And it's also an important factor to see that sometimes it's always good to have devotees, because even if one person is unalloyed and he is engaged in his service, then the nature provides everything for his betterment. Like suppose, Vaisheshika Prabhu always says that suppose if one is within his room and he just does Krishna consciousness, chants his rounds, reads Bhagavatam, the world may not know it, but Krishna takes care of him. And also in the Shastras it is said how Risheshringa, isn't that the story? He was so pure, and the moment he stepped on the land, the rain started falling. And we also say that even if there is one person in the city, just for his cause, the rain will fall. Because even if nobody knows in the neighborhood that there is a devotee who is doing all this, but still because of his presence, but the Mother Nature will shower mercy to the entire place around him. So that's why even though we may not do great preaching or we may not be famous, sometimes we may feel that, oh, I'm doing so much, but I don't have any reciprocation, or nobody knows me, or something like that. But we should be really convinced that if we are really pure and unalloyed, we are really doing service, even if one is not talking, or because Krishna will make him glorious, but in his own way. But he is doing welfare just by being pure, because all the facilities are provided not only to him, to the place and people who are around him. So now we also hear how by the influence of Ram, whatever we want to see in the state, how a country or a kingdom should look like, that's all there because of the influence of Ram and his presence on the earth planet. After satisfying the inquiry of Valmiki Muni, which was for the benefit of the three worlds, Sri Narada again took up his travels, spreading the glories of the Supreme Lord. The sage Valmiki then journeyed to the banks of the river Tamasa, accompanied by his disciple, Bharadwaj. At the river bank, Valmiki sat down to meditate upon the words of Sri Narada. Sitting within the forest, Valmiki happened to see a pair of cranes fully absorbed in sexual intercourse and singing in melodious jubilation. At that time, a malicious hunter of the Nishada race appeared from his hiding place and released an arrow that pierced the body of the male bird, causing it to fall shrieking to the ground. Then, upon seeing her mate writhing upon the ground and smeared with blood, the she-bird cried out in terror. Having suddenly been cast down from the heights of sensual pleasure to the depths of despair. When Valmiki witnessed this tragic scene, feelings of great compassion welled up within his breast. Considering the Nishada's violent act to be extremely sinful, Valmiki became angry and cursed the hunter, saying, "O killer of birds, as punishment for your heartless murder of an innocent creature engaged in gratifying his mate, may you never find peace of mind for endless years." However, no sooner was this curse uttered than Valmiki felt a pang of shame for becoming a victim of uncontrolled anger. Indeed, as an enlightened soul, he knew that all living beings are acting helplessly under the influence of material nature. Thus, he regretted retaliating against the hunter. At the same time, Valmiki was astonished that the curse he uttered had come from his mouth in a wonderfully poetic meter. Indeed, his curse seemed to hint of the predominant emotional expression of Ramayana, which he had been contemplating since his meeting with Sri Narada. This caused Valmiki to remark to his disciple Bharadvaja, "From my sorrow came a verse of 4 lines, each containing 8 syllables. From shoka, lamentation, had come a wonderful shloka, verse. For without compassion, there is no possibility of genuine poetic expression." Thereafter, Valmiki bathed in the river Tamasa and returned to his ashrama with Bharadvaja. While continuing to meditate upon his curse of the hunter, he suddenly saw Lord Brahma descending from his abode, the topmost planet within the universe. Overwhelmed with wonder and jubilation, the speechless Valmiki stood up to receive the firstborn being of the universe. It's very mysterious, like how things happen, because we always think that the spiritual things should start in a very auspicious manner or something like that, isn't it? But the way in which Ramayana started is apparently doesn't seem to be very auspicious, or doesn't seem to be something that we would be talking. But there was a very recent lecture by Radhanath Swami of turning, I don't remember the topic, but the main thing that he is saying is our life could change from at any point. Like sometimes we cannot attribute our limited knowledge to the happenings in our lives and think that this is auspicious or this is inauspicious, because even if the most inauspicious things could happen in our life, but from that one can develop a great attachment to Lord Krishna and come out very victorious. But the main thing is the attitude of how we take it. Valmiki could have regretted that he did this mistake of it's not a mistake, because he says that because sometimes why we do things, it's not in our control. There are only certain limit to which we can control ourselves. Sometimes suddenly we say something, isn't it? And we don't know, how come I did that? You see, because there is also a factor called Paramatma, and he is also acting through us. So sometimes it's very, very difficult to understand why things happen in the way they happen. But the main thing is how we use it from that point. Do we use it with the right attitude and move on with our spiritual life? That is what makes us a success in spiritual life. Because sometimes we think that we are devotees and we chant our rounds and everything should go on very smoothly in our lives. But if you see Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda, they were so close to Krishna, they were serving Krishna at every moment. But a snake comes and swallows. Remember when he went after the Shivaratri fasting, they went to take bath and he swallowed. How does that happen? Maybe first Nanda Maharaj can say, oh, maybe my worship to Krishna is not successful because I'm not happy, or this disturbance comes to me. Not like that, The main thing is, we are worshipping Krishna. It doesn't mean that we will not behave otherwise, or we will always be perfect. No, we will also be imperfect. And there will be sufferings upon us. But what is important is, in those sufferings, are we calling out for Krishna? That is what makes the difference. We should not, instead of praying for protection from millions of things, what if one gets, suppose if we are going out, we say that, oh, we have 20 bodyguards and so many things for protection that some people may not shooters or something like that. Instead, if one wears like a bulletproof dress, that is more like, then he is free, he can go anywhere, right? So like that, the protection should come from within, which is like we should pray that no matter what suffering comes, please give me the humility and tolerance to bear all sufferings, all trials and troubles. So if we pray like that, then whatever comes, we can be successful. Otherwise, we cannot list out all the sufferings that might come and go in front of Krishna and say that, oh, let this not happen to me, let that not happen to me, because it's a big list. But instead, we can make one prayer. Please give me the strength, the mental strength, the internal strength, and unalloyed devotion. Then it becomes easy. That's how we should see it. And we should always be confident that no matter what difficulty comes in our lives, Krishna is still there, even if it seems like we are apparently failing. Vaisheshika Prabhu was saying in one class that the Pandavas always plan to how to put themselves in trouble. Why? Because trouble means seeing Krishna. Because if everything is smooth, then you tend to go with the flow. When things are not smooth, then we talk to Krishna. When we think about Krishna. So Pandavas are like always planning to put themselves in trouble. So that's a nice lesson to learn. Okay, let's move on. When Lord Brahma appeared before him, Valmiki offered his respectful obeisances and worshipped Lord Brahma with great awe and reverence. Is this a place where we stopped? Let me just see. Okay, yeah. Then Lord Brahma, the universal grandsire, who can understand the hearts of everyone, said, O blessed sage, please do not grieve by thinking you have wrongly cursed the Nishada hunter. In truth, the words that you appeared to utter in anger were my own. They were spoken through your mouth for the purpose of inspiring you to accomplish a great task. Indeed, the time has come for you to compose the history of Lord Ramachandra's life, great transcendental pastimes meant for the ultimate welfare of the world. My dear Valmiki, there is no cause for you to be anxious, for by the strength of my benediction, everything that is unknown to you will become clearly revealed within your heart. Thus, by my grace, your narration of the Ramayana will be faultless. Here we can see that one cannot become a scholar by one's own endeavor, because by the mercy of Krishna, everything gets revealed from one's heart. That's why it said that all the knowledge is there in the form, in the ether. All the Vedic knowledge is there in the ether. And the more we chant with focus, the more the essence of spirituality gets imported within our hearts automatically. So it's a great mystery. We cannot explain it with any technology, but it does happen. After bestowing this benediction upon Valmiki, Lord Brahma departed from his abode upon his celestial swan carrier, filling all who beheld him with wonder. Valmiki then sat down in meditation to discover all the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra as indicated by Lord Brahma. Absorbed in deep trance, Valmiki clearly envisioned within his heart all the events of Lord Rama's appearance. Valmiki then composed the Ramayana in 24,000 verses. 24,000 verses. After completing the epic poem, he wondered whom he could teach it to so that it would remain preserved in the memory and propagated all over the world. When Valmiki was thus contemplating, his disciples Lava and Kusha, who were dressed as rishis, came before him and touched his feet. As was a daily custom, Sita had given birth to the twin brothers while in exile, and they had remained under Valmiki's care ever since. Sita's forced exile had come about when a citizen of Ayodhya doubted her chastity after being touched by the 10-headed monster Ravana. Thus, Lord Ramachandra was forced to banish her. Their two sons, Lava and Kusha, were gifted with fine memories and musical abilities. Moreover, they were well versed in the Vedas. Physically, the twins were exact replicas of their father, and musically, they were as talented as the heavenly Gandharvas. Thus, as Valmiki gazed fondly upon the twins, he realized that they were fully qualified to receive the Ramayana. Thereafter, the Valmiki proceeded to teach Lava and Kusha the entire Ramayana with great care. The twins committed the entire text to memory. Following Valmiki's instructions, they chanted Lord Ramachandra's wonderful pastimes before great sages, learned Brahmanas, and other pious men pure in heart. The learned Brahmanas experienced great transcendental pleasure in reciting the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra. Thus, the Brahmanas praised Lava and Kusha, rewarding them with many valuable gifts. From that day, Lava and Kusha began traveling all over the world, reciting the epic Ramayana. In the course of their wanderings, they eventually came to Ayodhya. There, Lord Ramachandra saw the two boys wandering through the city streets, dressed in the garb of rishis. Upon hearing the wide acclaim of their expert recitation of his transcendental pastimes, Lord Rama took great pleasure in inviting them to his palace to recite the Ramayana. Still, although they were his sons, he did not recognize them. After respectfully receiving the twin sages, the Lord invited them into his royal assembly. Lord Rama observed that the boys, although dressed as ascetic Brahmanas, had the features of Kshatriyas. Speaking to his brothers Bharata, Lakshmana, and Shatrugna, Rama said, "O best of the Raghu's dynasty, O best of King Raghu's dynasty, please listen to this wonderful narration. Although these two singers appear like ascetics, they have the marks of great rulers. Listen to this story because it is full of literary beauty and has universal appeal." As Lava and Kusha began the narration of the beautiful epic poem, Rama and his brothers soon forgot everything else. Becoming fully absorbed in hearing the Ramayana, the bonds of material existence can be completely cut by simply chanting and hearing the Lord's glories. The bonds of material existence can be completely cut by simply chanting and hearing the Lord's glories. Okay, this one pastime came to my mind, how nicely and charmingly Lava and Kusha sang Ramayana is that, suppose if there is an assembly and there is a king sitting on the throne, right? Is it possible for the king to like get down and go? No, because all focus will be on the king, right? He cannot just go and do what he wants to do. But suppose if we are watching a movie or listening to something, even though we hear by ourselves, but it gives more pleasure if we just, they clap on their thighs and like you clap your friend's thighs and prove like how you feel like that, together. So Ram was so overwhelmed by hearing this pastime. He wanted to be one among the hearers, but how could he go? But when Lava and Kusha were singing, Lord Ram will get down his throne and he will sit amongst the listeners and he will be like enjoying with them, like because that's how it was. But how could he go down? Because all the people's attention were on Lava and Kusha, because they were so attractive and everybody was with that focus, they were listening. So even the king getting out of the throne, nobody could notice. The next one. The great tract of land known as Koshala extended along the banks of the Sarayu river. This land was verdant, prosperous, and rich in grain. Within this vast territory was the renowned city of Ayodhya, built by the desire of Vaivasvata Manu, the ruler of mankind. This glorious city was 96 miles long and 24 miles wide. It was well laid out, and its beautiful straight roads were perfumed with scented water sprayed from the trunks of intoxicated elephants. Every day, the damsels of the celestial planets hovered above it in their beautiful airplanes and showered it with flowers. The arched gateways of Ayodhya were made of marble, and the gates were wrought with gold and silver and embedded with precious jewels. Cannons and catapults capable of repulsing any enemy protected the city walls. The marketplaces were well planned, and 7-story houses symmetrically lined the streets. 7-story houses symmetrically lined the streets. Adorned with multi-storied palaces and surrounded with exquisite gardens, Ayodhya resounded with the vibrations of musical instruments, rivaling Amaravati, the abode of the heavenly king Indra. Through the city, bards and singers recited the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and dancers acted out the Lord's pastimes for everyone's benefit. Within Ayodhya are many beautiful gardens abounding with flowers and shading by fruit trees. Blue, red, and golden lotuses filled the ponds, and fountains shot water high into the air. Gentle breezes carried the aromatic spray from the fountains, cooling the citizens by their touch and making even a hot summer day seem like spring. The sounds of cranes and peacocks could be heard everywhere. The water flowing through Ayodhya's streams and rivulets tasted as sweet as sugarcane sap, and it was used not only for drinking but for irrigating numerous mango orchards. Many houses and palaces, perfectly designed, were built of precious stones and decorated with flags and festoons. Their beauty rivaled the palaces of Vaikuntha. Thousands of warriors protected the great city. Skilled archers, well versed in the use of weapons, and chariot fighters who were able to fight with thousands of men at a time. The streets leading into Ayodhya were always filled with travelers. Kings and princesses from all parts of the world came to render their annual tribute and pay respects to the king of Ayodhya. Traders from near and far flocked to the markets to barter. Traders from near and far flocked to the markets to barter. Brahmana priests could often be seen pouring ghee into the sacrificial fires and chanting Vedic hymns proclaiming the glories of Lord Vishnu. Having mastered their senses and devoted themselves to truth, these Brahmanas were blessed with all good qualities. Get a sense how Ayodhya looked like. You see how the entrances were flocked with travelers all the time, and we can see the Disneyland is always flocked with travelers, right? Because it's a fantasy world that's created, like something where people can go and get happiness. But here we see how Ayodhya, some people say it's a fantasy, but it's not. It really existed. Even now, if one goes with a true devotion, these things can manifest to them in the dhams. But all the technology that we want to see, everything existed, but it was very cooling. And there were no like big giant software companies or the big fours, nothing like that, because everything was subtle, and people don't have to go to work from 8 to 5 because they have the big houses with so many pools and gardens and fountains, but they don't stay there to enjoy that, isn't it? But here we see how every citizen was enjoying, and there were roads and there were 7-story buildings and everything, but it was so cooling, because Prabhupada also said that the modern technology and the industrialization is ugra karma. It increases the heat because of the nature of it propagating ignorance. So it's so nice to hear this, isn't it? Like how nice it would be to be in Ayodhya like that, serving Lord Ram. Maharaj Dasarath was the emperor of the entire world and was a great Rajarishi, considered almost on the level of Maharishi. He was a formidable warrior capable of fighting alone with an unlimited number of opponents. Because he and the citizens were completely pious, Ayodhya was the picture of perfect Vedic civilization. Every imaginable opulence was exhibited in perfection, and material miseries coming from the results of sinful life were practically non-existent. In Ayodhya, the four social orders, namely Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas and Shudras, participated cooperatively for the peace and prosperity of the kingdom. No one cheated and no one was miserly. Arrogance, atheism, and harsh behavior and speech were conspicuous by their absence. Even though Maharaj Dasarath possessed such fantastic opulence and prestige, he remained unhappy. Try as he may, the king was unable to beget a son to continue his dynasty. Finally, after much deliberation, King Dasaratha decided to perform a horse sacrifice for the purpose of begetting a son. With this in mind, he sent his chief minister Sumantara to call for his family priests. When the Brahmanas, headed by Vashishta and Vamadeva, assembled, Maharaj Dasaratha addressed them saying, "O best among the twice-born, for many years I have ardently desired to beget a son. However, all my efforts have been in vain. Because I am without a heir, I can no longer feign happiness. Indeed, my days seem wasted and are filled with grief. Thus, after much careful consideration and with your kind permission, I have decided to perform a horse sacrifice. Because you are fully knowledgeable in the scripture, I am confident that you will be able to lead me on the proper path." The priests unanimously approved of Maharaj Dasaratha's idea to perform the horse sacrifice, and thereafter the king ordered his ministers to make all necessary arrangements without delay. Sumantara then took Maharaj Dasaratha aside to narrate the following story that he had formerly heard from Sanat Kumara, who had spoken it in an assembly of great sages. "You will be very interested to hear this story, my dear king," Sumantara said, "because it predicts that in the future you will become the father of 4 glorious sons." It so happened that Sanat Kumara previously related the same story in the Satya Yuga of the previous millennium. Thus, none of the events which were described by him had yet occurred, but were destined to take place in the far distant future. Due to some offense on the part of King Romapada, there once came to be an extremely severe drought within his kingdom, causing great fear among all the living entities. When the conditions became intolerable, Maharaj Romapada summoned his council of learned Brahmanas and inquired from them the cause of the drought. "I know that it's because of some fault of mine that this terrible drought has now overcome my kingdom. O best of the twice-born, because your knowledge is boundless, please prescribe the proper atonement for my past sins." The Brahmanas replied, "O king, there is a great Brahmana sage named Mrigi Rishi who is residing in the forest. Mrigi Rishi is the son of Kashyapa, and his son is named Rishyashringa. If you can bring the Rishi's son to your kingdom and give him your daughter Shanta in marriage, the drought will immediately end." Shanta was actually the daughter of Maharaj Dasaratha, but had been given to the king's childless friend Romapada at the latter's request. King Romapada was very glad to learn the means for ending the drought, but when he requested his priests to summon Rishyashringa, they refused. The Brahmanas explained, O king, we fear that Mrigi Rishi will curse us if we try to lure his son away from home. Rishi Shringa had been brought up by his father in complete isolation. He has never seen another human being. Because Rishi Shringa has never once beheld a member of the fair sex, he is completely unaware of the pleasure of their association. My dear king, since we desire your welfare, we have devised a method for bringing Rishi Shringa to your kingdom. Have the most beautiful of courtesans go there and allure him with their feminine ways. We are certain that by this means your aim will easily be accomplished. Maharaj Romapada agreed to their plan and then sent for the foremost of young and beautiful prostitutes. After being thus instructed by the king and promised sufficient rewards, the girls departed for the forest and determined to bring back the young rishi at all costs. Thereafter, the prostitutes set up their camp at the ashrama of Mrigi Rishi and waited for the opportune time. It so happened that one day Rishi Shringa wandered away from home and came to the camp of the prostitutes. Seeing him, the girls jubilantly approached Rishi Shringa. When they asked about his identity, the boy replied, I am the son of Mrigi Rishi. I am engaged in performing austerities nearby at my father's ashrama. How wonderfully beautiful all of you are to look at. I wish that you could come to my home and accept my worship and hospitality. The prostitutes then went to Rishi Shringa, where they were nicely received at his ashrama with offerings of water to drink, water for washing their feet, and various kinds of fruits and roots. However, the girls were extremely afraid of the father's imminent return and did not wish to stay too long. As the prostitutes were leaving, they said, My dear friend, our customs for receiving guests are quite different from yours. Now, please accept our offerings of honor and respect in return. Saying this, the girls embraced Rishi Shringa tightly with great affection and then fed him sumptuous sweets. Never before had the Rishi's innocent son tasted anything so pleasing, for he had been accustomed to eating only fruits and roots. Indeed, he thought that the sweets were a type of wonderful fruit. Moreover, since he had previously seen only his father, he took the prostitutes to be enchantingly beautiful men. After the girls departed, Rishi Shringa began to experience feelings of unease and restlessness within his heart. The seed of lusty desire, which had remained dormant within his heart, had sprouted. Rishi Shringa began to constantly think of the beautiful women. Rishi Shringa could hardly sleep that night. His mind and heart became overwhelmed by thoughts of their sweet speech and tender embraces. Unable to think of anything else, the following day Rishi Shringa went to the prostitutes' camp. The girls received Rishi Shringa with great delight and then explained, This is not a real home. Please come aboard our magnificent floating hermitage and accompany us to a place where we will be able to entertain you in a much better fashion. We have many nice varieties of fruit and roots, and we shall pass the time so enjoyably that you will hardly be able to perceive how time is passing. Being captivated at heart, Rishi Shringa unhesitatingly accompanied the prostitutes. Thus, the women allured him back to the capital of Romapada within the kingdom of Anga. Indeed, even as Rishi Shringa was being carried down the Ganga, Indra began to send forth showers of rain, giving joy to all the living creatures. As soon as he understood that Rishi Shringa has arrived, King Romapada came out from his palace and bowed down before the young Rishi. Then, after worshipping Rishi Shringa with great attention, Romapada escorted him into the inner apartments of his palace, where he presented his daughter to the Rishi in charity. The power of association. Like how we have 6 more minutes, we should not go beyond 10. How, like even though like almost like for until his youth, which is assumed to be 20-25 years, he never seen a man, and nothing but just by the touch of a woman, all his lusty desires got awakened. So, means everybody, it's not that sometimes we see kids or some people and we say that, oh, they're so innocent and things like that, and then when they're 13 or 14, then suddenly they behave a little different, right? But nobody is innocent, like, because even their kids, even a newborn, nobody is innocent. The seed is there. It's just that when the time comes, it automatically sprouts. Because, and they say like sweet 16, first love and all that. Why? Because the first person to whom a person like gets attracted to, it creates a same kind of feeling that Rishishringa has felt, right? So people think that that's the highest happiness, and they relate everything to that. But in fact, our acharyas say, yuvatinam yatha yuni, because how a young man and a young woman get automatically attracted just by seeing. Like, these days it's not young man and young woman, sometimes old men and old women also do that. But the thing is, like, how the attraction is so automatic and nothing in the three planetary system seems to stop the mind going towards the opposite sex. But then the acharyas pray that let my mind get so much attracted to you like that. Let my mind go flow like that. But if we just sit and think about it, like how deep that relationship is and how deep it will be so nice that's the highest pleasure. Like, people can say like they are great sages or something, but everybody from the core of their heart can say that attraction brings so much satisfaction to oneself, because the attraction towards the opposite sex. But if that type of happiness one gets by seeing Krishna, that's what the gopis did, right? All our acharyas did. And such type of happiness, if it gets, then that's the truth. Then we have accomplished our goal in life, isn't it? So that's one type of prayer that one can offer to Krishna. Okay, let's move on. Read for one more page and then we'll stop. As soon as he understood that Rishishringa had arrived, King Romapada came out from his... I think we read that. Okay, when he could understand that Rishishringa was fully satisfied, Maharaja Romapada begged from him the benediction that neither he nor his father would show their wrath toward him because of the duplicitous manner in which he had allured Rishishringa away from home. Rishishringa gave the king his assurance, and thereafter the marriage between him and Shanta was celebrated with great festivity. After the wedding, the newly married couple continued to live in Maharaj Romapada's palace and thus passed their days happily in royal comfort. So we are stopping at page 14, and I think every day there will be conference calls to read further and finish this book before Ramanavami. Any thoughts, any points before we wrap up? That got stuck in your mind and that you're taking away today?
You're just telling about like it's not about the youths. You're just telling about that it's not about the youths. Even the old person can get attracted at any time. So I remember like how Muni Bishamitra, Saint Bishamitra and also Savari Muni, they were attracted. Like Savari Muni was attracted by seeing the family of a fish. So that can also happen. He had done austerity for 50,000 years, but still he got attracted. So if you have like karma, like prarabdha karma or desire, which has not been satiated, and you did not replace that with devotion, then it can affect at any time.
Yeah, that's very good. Thank you, Prabhuji. You can... Any other points? Because that's why no other process gives us protection like that of Krishna consciousness, because all our senses are engaged in Krishna consciousness. When we see the form of Krishna, because means unnecessarily why would one gaze upon somebody else, means when there are deities to see. Because you can, like Vaisheshika Prabhu says, you can, if you stare at somebody for a few moments, people get like, why are you looking at me? But one can come to the temple and stare at Krishna for hours, and he likes that, and the mouth in singing the glories. And so even for our kids, like we teach like this, that like unnecessary, like over indulgence with opposite sex is not required, like that. Then Krishna consciousness provides a better alternative, but one can have the same feelings and happiness by engaging all our senses in Krishna consciousness. So that is a way to overcome lust, which is lust, anger and greed are the three gateways to hell, right? Everything seems so easy when we fall down, but as we see here, it may seem like everything may seem, when we start to commit, like so innocent and everything, but the moment when something happens, it creates an impression within the heart. That's the samskara, because even marriage, they say that it creates a hard knot in the heart, and it's so difficult to unentangle it, and that's in the whole life is gone. So like that, means it's not that one should not get married or something like that. Yes, everything happened, but unnecessary attraction and all these things, because it takes away all the energy. Because it is said that one can commit like small sin, like you set a fire, you get one punishment, and you steal, you get another punishment. But all those sins, if one has to commit at one time, that is equal to, is given to a person if one engages in illicit sex. Because then all the sins, cumulative sins, if you commit at one time, then all the reactions will come upon you, like that. Because that's the highest level of sense, all your senses are engaged, and then the reactions are so severe. How? Because it could happen within the four walls and nobody would see it, but the mind, because if you see in Rishishringa, he was not able to sleep, because it creates a deep impression within the heart, and it would not go away unless one surrenders to Krishna and prays to him in repentance. Only Krishna consciousness and devotion to Krishna can disentangle us from sins like that. So thinking that one should learn from the Shastras and not engage in all those sinful activities. So hearing Lord Ram's pastimes and everything, like Durena Yavaram Krishna, means keep all those things far distant from our Krishna consciousness, and hear Lord Ram's stories, and as Prabhuji was saying, become one of the associates of Lord Ram and serve him eternally in happiness. So with this, let's conclude the morning session, and we'll do Guru Puja for Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada ki jai. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Bando moi savadhana mate savadhana mate yahara prasade bhai e bhava koriya jai hara prasade bhai e bhava toriya Krishna prapti hoya hoite prapti hoya hoite Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Te Koriya Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Te Koriya Arna Koriha Mane Asha Koriha Mane Asha Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati Dane Rati Aise Uttama Gati E prasade pure sarva asha Sade pure sarva asha Chakkudan dilo je janme janme prabhu se Chakkudan dilo je janme janme prabhu se Divya Gyan Hriday Prakashito Divya Gyan Hriday Prakashito Prema Bhakti Aha Hoite O Vidya Vinashayate Hoite Pravidya Vinashaya Vede Gaya Haracharito Vede Gaya Haracharito Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Lokonath Lokera Jivana Lokonath Lokera Jivana Srila Prabhupada Lokera Jivana Prabhupada Lokera Jivana Ha ha Prabhu Koro Daya Deham More Pada Chaya Ha Prabhu Koro Deham More Pada Chaya Prabhupada Koro Daya Deham More Pada Chaya Prabhupada Koro Deham Pada Chaya Prabhupada Koro Daya Deham More Pada Chaya पात करो दया दे हमारे पादाचा एबे असगो त्रिभुवाना यशगु त्रिभुवाना श्रीला प्रभुपाद पतिता पावाना श्रीला प्रभुपाद पतिता पावाना तुआ पादे लयलो शराना तुआ पादे लयलो शराना जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा पादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा काली कुकुर का धन यादी चाहो है काली कुकुर का धन यादी चाहो है काली युग पावन काली भयनाशन शिशचिनंदन गाओ है काली युग पावन काली भयनाशन शिशचिनंदन गाओ है गदाधर मादन नित्यर प्राणदन अद्वैतेर प्रभु चित्त गोरा गदाधर मादन नित्यर प्राणदन अद्वैतेर प्रभु चित्त गोरा निमाई विश्वंभर श्रीनिवासीश्वर भक्त समूह चित्त चोरा निमाई विश्वंभर श्रीनिवासीश्वर भक्त समूह चित्त चोरा नदिया शशधर मायापुरीश्वर नाम प्रवर्तन सूरा नदिया शशधर मायापुर ईश्वर नाम प्रवर्तन सूरा गृही जन शिक्षक न्यासी कुल नायक माधव राधा भवपूरा गृही जन शिक्षक न्यासी कुल नायक माधव राधा भवपूरा सार्वभौम शोधन गजपति तारण रामानंद पोषण वीरा सार्वभौम शोधन गजपति तारण रामानंद पोषण वीरा रूपानंद वर्धन सनातन पालन हरिदास बोधन धीरा रूपानंद वर्धन सनातन पालन मोदन धीरा व्रजरास भावन दुष्ट मत शातन कपटी विघातन कामा व्रजरास भावन दुष्ट मत शातन कपटी विघातन कामा शुद्ध भक्त पालन शुष्क ज्ञान तादन चल भक्ति दूषण रामा शुद्ध भक्त पालन शुष्क ज्ञान तादन चल भक्ति दूषण रामा काली कुकुर का धन यादी चाहो है कली का धन यादी चाहो है काली युग पावन काली बोयनाशन शिशचिनंदन गाओ है काली युग पावन काली बोयनाशन शिशचिनंदन गाओ है हरिहराय नमः कृष्ण यादवाय नमः आय नमः कृष्ण यादवाय नमः यादवाय माधवाय केशवाय नमः यादवाय माधवाय केशवाय नमः गोपाल गोविंद राम श्री मधुसूदना गोपाल गोविंद राम श्री मधुसूदन गिरिधारी गोपीनाथ मदन मोहन गिरिधारी गोपीनाथ मदन मोहन श्री चैतन्य नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत सीता श्री चैतन्य नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत सीता Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rup Shri Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath, Shri Rup Shri Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath, Eshai Goshai Kori Charana Vandan, Kori Charana Vandan, Yaha Hoite Vigna Nasha Bishta Puran, Yaha Hoite Vigna Nasha Bishta Puran, Eshai Goshai Ai Muitaradas, Eshai Goshai Ai Muitaradas, Tansabara Padarenu Mora Panchagras, Tansabara Padarenu Mora Panchagras, Tandera Charana Seve Bhakta Sanevas, Tandera Charana Seve Bhakta Sanevas, Janame Janame Hoye Abhilas, Janame Janame Hoye Abhilas, Eshai Goshai Abhivraja Koilavas, Eshai Radha Krishna Nitya Leela Korila Prakash, Radha Krishna Nitya Leela Korila Prakash, Anande Bolo Hari Braja Vrindavan, Anande Bolo Raja Vrindavan, Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majai Aman, Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Shri Guru Vaishnava Pada Padma Koriyas, Hari Nam Sankirtana Kohe Narottama Das, Nam Sankirtana Kohe Narottama Das, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Shyam Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radhe, Radha Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radhe, Jaya Mahaprabhu Jaya Mahaprabhu Jaya Mahaprabhu Jaya Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu Jaya Mahaprabhu Jaya Mahaprabhu Jaya Mahaprabhu, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Narahari, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Narahari, Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Narahari. Hari, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingh, Jaya Nara Hari, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Nitai Gaura Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Namo Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivarajakacarya Ashtottara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki. Namo Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivarajakacarya Ashtottara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय, गंगामयी की जय, यमुनामयी की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की, वृंदावन मायापुर धाम की, ट्रांसेंडेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की, समवेद गौर भक्त वृंद की, निताय गौर गौर प्रेमानंदे, हरि हरि बोल. So I think prasadam will be there in the inside room. Thank you all very much for joining online, and this ends our Saturday program. Who is the cook for today? You know, Prabhuji? Okay. Thank you all for the cooks. Hare Krishna. Thank you.